There is a wave of violence, sexual or non-sexual violence against women all over the world. As you can see, I've detailed from a 15-year-old boy to a 20-something-year-old, a church friend, a 20-something-year-old, all the way to a 71-year-old man in France, all the way to a bunch of men in India, who I assume, as we've been told, might have been between the ages of 25 to 45. Hello world, it's me, Abraham Sharon. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. As you can see, I am in a very different venue. We're always moving forward. What can I say about this place? It was, a friend of mine who offered to set this up for me with the mic, like a real podcast person. I'm a real podcast person. I always say I'm not one of those people because I don't have a mic like that. I never even got to buy one. He just had equipment in his, in his house. I was like, oh yeah, you can have my equipment if you want. I was like, okay, we'll take it to the place. Here we are in another place. I can't stop cheesing. Anyway, welcome to today's episode. I am so happy that you're here. If you're coming from episode 4, I think I should stop counting the episodes at some point. I'm still counting in my head as we go, but one day it's going to be 100, 200, and I'll stop counting. But for now, let's get into today's episode. So, even though I'm cheesing, like I said, today's episode is not a cheesing episode. If you've not been living under a rock but inside of one, like the rest of us, you will have seen online or have heard whispers of some things that have been happening to women all over the world, basically. I'm going to give a summary for everyone who doesn't know so that we can all be on the same page, and then I'll say what I want to say and I will go. Let's start from here. Everything I'm saying to you right now is verified and it's researched. You can do your own Google search, and I think you should do not just take information like that from the internet. People, twist it for their own agendas, but everything I'm saying right now is verified and you can check it yourself. All right, so let's start from Nigeria because I'm a Nigerian. A 15-year-old boy snuck into his neighbor's house, took a pistol, something we call a pistol. It's not a pew-pew. It's not a gun. I'm going to have to what's the word now? Censor some of the words I say because of YouTube copyright violations, not copyright, YouTube censoring and all of that. I don't want that to, YouTube to take down the video. But so when I say pew pew, you know what I mean. So anyway, the boy sneaks into someone's house and he takes a pistol. It's used to pound yam. Nigerians know what that is. And he uses it to hit this 14-year-old girl. He ends up raping her, okay, and he was caught. Obviously, that's how we know about it, and that happened in Nigeria, which is, crazy, very crazy thing to hear. So that's a 15-year-old boy in Nigeria. I'm going to move all the way now to France. So in France, a 71-year-old man, can't remember his name. I have his name somewhere. Give me 1 second. A 71-year-old man named, let's see, Dominic Hellicott, if it's pronounced that way. He's 71 years old, and apparently over the course of, over a decade, he had hired or, gotten over 81 men to sleep with his wife. And yeah, she didn't know about it. It's very hard to bring out, which is why I'm kind of slowing down as I talk about it, because these are horrible, horrible things that have been happening to women in the world. But anyway, over the course of a decade, he hired these men who were part of a group chat he was on to sleep with his wife or to grape her, which is actually the term here. It's in court right now in France, and it's a horrible thing. About 50 of the men have been caught, and about 30 something of them, 31 of them are still on the run or whatever. And I will try and give updates on my TikTok and Instagram, which should be on the screen somewhere, as we go. All right, so that's France. Now I'm going to go all the way to India. In India, there already protests about this, so maybe you've heard of the protests and everything. But a doctor, a laboratory assistant. She works in a hospital basically. She was, coming off a 36-hour shift, and she was really tired, and they have a space where they let, their staff go rest. The woman was also raped by a bunch of men. We're not sure how many they are. There's an investigation happening right now, and oof, makes me feel unsafe even talking about it. And she died. The woman died. Uh, like I said, there are protests happening about it. I'm not even sure what the updates are on that, because the major news media isn't really carrying, giving us updates on this particular thing, and so that's been happening. Anyway, last one, because I know this is horrible news for many of you to even like go through and think about. Going all the way back to Nigeria, a girl was thought missing. I actually saw the I want to say ads, the posters for her kidnapping, or she was missing, her missing posters. And she was missing for a while until about last week or 2 weeks ago we hear that she apparently went to a friend's house, a church friend. He killed her, or as TikTok says, she was unalived by him, um and he buried her in his house. Now, where am I going with all of this? Telling you all these horrible things that are happening. I'm telling you this because there is I don't want to call it a pandemic, because a pandemic is a really bad thing, but there is a wave of violence, sexual or non-sexual violence against women all over the world. As you can see, I've detailed from a 15-year-old boy to a 20-something-year-old, a church friend, a 20-something-year-old, all the way to a 71-year-old man in France, all the way to a bunch of men in India, who I assume, as we've been told, might have been between the ages of 25 to 45. So, the boy in Nigeria who's, just a neighbor, right? So that's a neighbor, the church friend, a husband, co-workers. This is both in age range. It's it covers a huge expanse of men, but also in the setting and in the environment in which these things happen. And so, because of all these things hitting the internet in the space of like 2-3 weeks of themselves, there's been so much discourse about the punishments for such crimes, and why women choose the bear, which I will talk about soon. um and also, not all men. These are the things that people are discussing on Twitter. I will never call it X, by the way. So during this entire discussion, I've had to sit down and listen to all the chaos and then form my own thoughts about this. And I think everyone should have their own opinions on stuff, but it's also good to listen to what other people have to say. So I'm going to start from the not all men part of things. Um, let's use this scenario. Did you know that in the snake kingdom, there are less than 22%, like less than 22% of snakes are, poisonous, actually. Like most of the time, if you probably see a snake pass here, it might bite you, sure, because, it's scared, or you're scared, or you spooked it, or whatever. It might bite you, but it's not poisonous. And that is about 22% of them that actually are. So let's say a random snake just trickles through the studio right now. Every single one of us in the building will sprint for our lives. Every single one of us will take off. Those of us, and I'm not counting myself as part of these people, who have the heart, or as the Mexicans say, the cajones. Okay, that's a joke for my guys. Anyway, those of us who have the heart would go after this snake and kill it, right? But every single one of us would run. And this is the exact same thing with the women are doing by saying that they would rather choose the bear than choose the man. It's not because every single one of us is like that, but because there is no way to differentiate between a man that is sexually violent, or a man that isn't sexually violent. It's not written on our foreheads, it's not tattooed on our hearts. You can't test for it in our blood. is just something that men are. And if enough of us are a thing, just to be safe, of course, you would want, to run first and ask questions later. And so when women say we would rather choose the bear, the bear is, as I think of it, a metaphor for safety. It is not a rejection of you, of men, right? It is women rather choosing to be safe than to endanger themselves by trusting a random man. And if you're a man who is actually a good man, you will not be worried about this because the women in your life will know this is a good man. I can trust this man. And so they will choose you because they know they're safe with you. And if women can be safe with you, you wouldn't be bothered by the not all men thing. Now I understand it's easy for me to say this because I have a girlfriend. I have no reason to meet random women because I'm not looking for any. But that doesn't mean I don't speak to women on a daily basis. I had a new coworker at work. She's Spanish. And I don't know why I said that, but maybe she's the first Spanish person I'm meeting. Is she? I think she is. Anyway, she's fancy. She's Spanish, and she's a new coworker at work. And we just got to talking. With a certain group of us, and she mentions that she lives on XYZ street, and I'm like, oh, I live on that street too. I happen to live at the top of the street. Where do you live? Like, where on the street do you live? There was a certain hesitation, before she didn't want to tell me where she lived. It was obvious. And for a second there, I was like, oh, why wouldn't you say that? It's weird that you wouldn't. It's fine. I'm safe. I'm not dangerous. But then it dawned on me that she was choosing safety. It wasn't a rejection of me. She was just choosing to be safe. I'm a random man who she doesn't know. If a neighbor, like I said, a 15-year-old boy, a neighbor, can sneak into a 14-year-old girl's house, bludgeon her with a blunt instrument, and then grape her, then how much more so a 6'4", how many pounds man who, she doesn't know. So you see how it is a choice of safety. So that is the man versus bear thing. Now let's talk, like I think I've already talked about the not all men part of that. Of course, it is not all men, but what would you rather women do? Now that is on one side of things. Let us go to men as a problem, which is something hard to say because in the world I've grown in my family, there hasn't been any like divorces or hearing that, oh, uncle this beats auntie this. I think one time we heard that an uncle beat an auntie in marriage. So I'm not accustomed personally to being around violent men, not to talk of sexually violent men. Do you understand? I'm not accustomed to such things in my personal bubble in my life. My parents have been together, and of course, adults hide things, but as far as I know, none of this has happened. And so when I hear stuff like this, it sounds very alien of a man did this, a man did that. It's not something that I personally have seen, right? But over the course of these few weeks, hearing all these things that men have done all over the world, from children, teenagers, all the way to adults that are 70 plus years old, it's made me really understand that I have overestimated the goodness of men or humanity in general. I talked about it on my TikTok, and I've told people to follow me on TikTok, obviously. But something that many people have brought to my attention is that this has been happening a lot. I just happen to have heard about it, in such a short period of time. But also, the internet just happens to amplify these things now. That over the course of time, men have always been this way. We just happen to be hearing about it, which means fundamentally, there is something wrong with the way men are being brought up in society. All the way, like I said, again, from a 15-year-old boy all the way to a 70-something-year-old man, from Africa to Asia to Europe, all these people, there is something fundamentally wrong with the way men see women. So you would understand when women come out and say death to all men, which is something I have legit seen on Twitter. Crazy enough, under the thread where a woman said, death to all men, blah blah blah. A man actually said, there's a girl on Twitter called Uloma. If you're on Nigerian Twitter, maybe I'll find the tweet if I can and put it on the screen. Someone said something. A man said even if they're 18 of this girl, this Ulama girl, they can't take him. Like, they can't beat him. He'll be who he wants to be. There's nothing she can do because she's like the leader of the feminist or whatever on Twitter. Anyway, some other guy responded under this thread that if any girl is on the Ulama train, is following the things Ulama says, that she should be, how do you say this without YouTube taking down this video? She should be graped. I'll leave it at that. He was a little more descriptive about it, but a man outrightly said this on Twitter without fear. Now, Twitter as a platform, there's a problem there with what is allowed on that platform. We say free speech and all of that, but that a man will come out and say that means that there's a demographic of men who do not care to be seen as someone capable of grape, right? Right now, I'm thinking about the fruits grape because I've said grape a lot. Yeah, grapes are about to get such a bad rep from this version of society because this is how we substitute the words. Anyway, there is a version of men that are not scared to be seen as grapists and can just put this sort of thing out there. And then it made me think, do I have men in my life, young men, old men, that I would say if I had a cousin, because I don't have a sister, it's all boys. Shout out to my brothers. But I have cousins, a plethora of them that are, women in their own right, girls that are underage. Do I have men in my life? Do I have friends that are my age or younger who I cannot say, oh, my cousin is in your city. Can she stay maybe the night with you? Can she stay a week with you? Are there men in my life I would not trust with the women in my life? And if they are men like that, then there is something to be said about me, isn't there? And then I look back at it. Like I said, in my personal bubble, I happen to be fortunate to be around good men, actually good Christian men. And before this entire thing hit the internet, every time I tell people, "Oh, I did not," I just remembered something. Okay, if you follow me on TikTok, I've probably already posted a video about this. There's a man. I was traveling from London, down to my city. Anyway, so I met this guy at Heathrow Airport, and we just got talking. He's a Nigerian, I'm Nigerian. It's good to see people, and we happen to be going to the same city, and all of that. And so we just got talking. He's married, by the way. And so we're just talking, and he's like, "Oh, are you married?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not married. I have a girlfriend." Blah blah blah. And then at some point, I can't remember the segue to this conversation, but we started talking about what my oh okay, I remember. We were talking about the fact that Nigerian men in the city I live in are menaces to society and how they aggressively go after women. And he's heard some things. I've heard some things from women, who have told me the way Nigerian men are going after them. And these are not just Nigerian women. Nigerian men go after you know, all the races. We don't discriminate. Anyway, so he was like, "Oh, what about me? What do I do? What's my thing?" I'm like, "What do you mean by my thing?" He's like, "Oh, do I go after women too?" And I'm like, "I don't do that. No, I do not." He was like, "Oh, do I go to a club? Do I drink?" I'm like, "I don't club. I don't drink. I don't smoke." And in one of the episodes of the podcast, I already said this. I'm a virgin. I just don't roll that way. And he did not believe me. He did not believe me. People never tend to believe me every time I say this. In 2021, in 2021, when I was in Nigeria at some point, I was with some friends in the mall and they were buying some stuff from like maybe ShopRite or I can't remember what store it was. We were at the counter, and usually at the counter, there is like, usually in my head, it's like chocolate is usually there. And so I saw this thing and I picked it up and I thought it was like chocolate or something like that. I just needed like to buy something small because of change and all of that. So I picked up something and then everybody looked at me like, "Ooh, I'm picking that thing." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. It's just chocolate, isn't it?" And everyone was like, "Oh, it's not just chocolate. Apparently, it's chocolate that, gets you in the mood." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I put it back. And one of my friends was like, "Oh no, you can take it for your next, the next time." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I haven't even had the first time." Everybody there, including the girl at the till, lost. There was like, no way, you're lying. This, I'm like, I'm not lying. I'm sorry, but my parents raised me right. And now somehow I've crossed into talking about, being virgin or not. But the truth is, this optic or seeming optic of sexual violence against women, is in some way, I think, a result of the depravity of men and how men see women in society. And so I think one of the signs as men that we should catch from our friends, and maybe some men don't say these things in front of women, but some of the signs that your friends around you will exhibit that will make you know, oh, I can't leave women with this guy, is when he constantly is on the chase for the next woman. You have this guy who is, he's always like, he can't control himself around women, or the idea of, the next person for him to sleep with or something. That is, I think personally for me, that is a sign that, you can't have women around this guy. He's always on the chase for the next woman. He can't control himself. When people watch content that, you know, either not, maybe not vilifies women, but content that reduces women to objects, and then he laughs at it, he doesn't see it as a problem, that is a sign that this is a man who could be sexually violent or sexually depraved when it comes to women. I saw a video on TikTok. Looking back now, I'm seeing times when I have noticed this thing amongst men. There's this guy I follow on TikTok. He usually does film critiquing and stuff. um he posted a video rating WWE wrestlers. I watch wrestling, so I knew this, this content was, obviously going to be on my feed, and I didn't mind. He was rating the wrestlers not by how good these women were at wrestling, but which one he would sleep with. He had like a 1 to 10 list. He was rating them by how hot they were and which one he would sleep with. And men were arguing in the comments, and he was actually saying, oh no, everyone can have their list. This is just his on how hot he finds either of them. Can you imagine that? And then I put in the comments that, oh, yo, it's kind of weird that you would reduce women, like athletes, not just, women, but full blown athletes that, do, put on amazing performances every week for your entertainment. And you reduce them from, these super athletes to just things you would sleep with. Am I saying women are not attractive? Which is also what he told me. He responded to my comment saying, oh, I must be gay or something. I'm like, what is your problem? I'm just telling you to respect women. And it's everywhere in the people who, they'll call a girl, all those YouTube shows where they call women and tell them to turn around. And then, the men will rate her or something. Like I saw one where the guy was telling the girl to jump as she was jumping. I'm not saying that, women do obviously add to this degeneracy when it comes to sex and sexual things. But if the men can somehow control themselves and watch out in their own spaces where other men are exhibiting traits that shows that they can't be trusted with women, then we will take out about, a ton of the problem. Because here's something: all the men who are saying women do this too, women sexually assault men, women I don't know, women beat men too or whatnot, blah blah blah. How many times have we heard that a man was actually raped by a woman? How many? I'm not saying that it should happen or it doesn't happen, but how many times does that happen in a year? Show me 10 men that were raped in 1 year. I will show you 100. I will show you 1,000 probably. I think I have some stats actually. Yes, I remember. I have some stats concerning rape. Ugh, I said the word. YouTube, please don't take down this video. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay, here we go. All right. In 2019, right? So this is all the way back in 2019, by the way. I don't know if it's gone up or gone down, but this is alarming in and of itself. There were 32. Now this is just India because there are a billion people in India, and so I guess they use them as a case study, right? In 2019, there were 32,000 registered rape cases in India, with a rape with a rape rate of 4.9 per 100,000. The majority of these grapes, which is 89%, right, were committed by persons known to the victim. Friends, husbands, neighbors, brothers. Yes, brothers. I saw a girl talked about one on Twitter. She said it was her brother. Ugh, disgusting, really. Like, I'm disgusting behavior. Um, and yeah, out of this 32,000 in India, 27,000 were adult victims. 4,940 in as at 2019 were minor victims. This thing now extends even to kids, which is a whole topic on its own. But what I want to tell the men is that as a man, you need to just watch your own surrounding. If every single one of us watches and make sure that even the young ones coming up are not depraved, and it's hard to watch for these things because the internet has really sped up the rate of growth, into adulthood that the young ones have. I say now that I am who I am in spite of in spite of the internet, in spite of the things I've heard and seen. I am who I am now by the grace of God, family, and the type of men around me. And if we all as men can be the type of men that respect women more, treat them like human beings and not just objects, then we could raise a generation of younger men that do exactly the same. And maybe one day women will choose you instead of choosing the bear, right? They will take their time to see if you're a good man because the chances of them seeing a good man would actually go up. Would actually be high enough that they would not mind sticking around to find out. But right now, you can't. I mean, a woman in 10 men, if 8 of them are going to beat you or sexually grape you, right? Why would you even trust any random man? It's not women's fault. There is some faults to be found when it comes to degeneracy in society at large. But in the raping and killing of women, that is an extreme that should not be found in the community of men. Are they, other reasons why men tilt this way? Yes. That's not an excuse. It might be a reason, but it's not an excuse. If we are going to such an extreme with the women who we say we like, which is crazy. You say you like them and you treat them less than, which is it's not, you don't really like them. It's society has somehow messed up the way men think they like women, which again is another topic I could totally talk about. But yeah, I want to just be done here. I want to talk about important things on the podcast, but not these kind of things, the horrible things. But it was worth talking about, and I hope that the men who hear this learn something from this. Because here's another thing you should know. I tried to get about 4 women to come and talk about this on podcast. One of them was Indian, a friend of mine named Anusha. Shout out to Anusha, by the way. She told me about how a girl in India was raped on a bus by like 5 men when she was in India. She was in high school, and her mom, I think her mom didn't let her leave the house for a while that was happening, and it was a big thing in India at the time, but it wasn't like reported by mass media when she was 12. And when she talked about this, I could see that this was a real fear for her, a real fear. And I asked her if she was willing to go back to India, or to build a life in India, considering that this is a thing that happens a lot in that country. She didn't really answer, but I could see the doubt in her face that she would not want to raise her family in a country that she calls home because of this. Um anyway, she couldn't be on the podcast. It's hard to talk about. I tried to get some, other Nigerian women to talk about it. None of them is into the idea of talking about this to such detailed lengths. I even spoke to my mom about it. She said every woman has a tale of being almost sexually assaulted. It's extremely sad. So anyway, we've come to the end of today's episode. Again, it is not a haha episode. I've seen a lot of podcasts out there, and I really want to do a haha episode, and I will try. But I hope the men who hear this share this with other men around them so that they can hear that they can be better, that there is a world where they can be better. Like the guy who at the airport did not believe that I do not drink or smoke or chase women. He didn't believe me. He thought that every man has a thing. I'm not claiming to be the best of men. I want to be better every day for my mom, for my girlfriend, for my cousins, for my friends that are women. And I'm trying to be better every day, and we can all be better. There is a better version of man. I'm sure I will meet a man who is even far better than I am. And I want to attain for such things. There is a better version of man. If you need to talk to anyone, my TikTok and Instagram are on the screen. I can put you in contact with amazing counselors, amazing men, so you can see how great it is to be a good man. How amazing it is to be a good man. If I had the permission of the good men in my life, I would have totally put their Instagram, their accounts on the screen so that you guys could reach out as a man. If there's anything you're struggling with, any, I don't know, sexual things, even non-sexual things that has to do with being a man, being a better man. If I had their permission, I would have put it on the screen, but maybe I would reach out again through my Instagram and TikTok. If you're a man out there who needs help, personally reach out to me. I don't mind. I'll take out the time to talk to you and see how I can help you and put you in contact with the right people. All right? So thank you very much for listening to this episode. Also I want to shout out to uh Mr. Fred and Mrs. Dumebi. These are my people. They are the ones who gave me the space. They're the ones who provided the equipment. None of this is mine. I promise you, none of this is mine. I want to shout out to Mr. Kingsley, who Obidashi is his last name, very strong last name, who does my editing and all the production stuff for me. I want to shout out to his wife, Mrs. Anita, for allowing us to do this, me and her husband to do this together. Yeah, I'll shout out to my dad too for being a good man, and that is that is all the shout outs today. All right, so as we do at the end of every episode, I pick an amazing song because music heals the soul. Music heals the soul. I'm going to actually talk about the songs that I recommend here on my TikTok at length or more, so people know that on this podcast, even though we talk about the important things, we also talk about music. Music is also an important thing. I take it very seriously. You can ask my girlfriend. Anyway, today's song is by I have a list. I always have a list, and I see how I feel at the point where I want to talk about the song. And I like the song to always like connect to what I'm talking about, but there is no song there are songs that talk about sexual violence against women, and I think I know the perfect one. Today's song is by Omowumi. It's a Nigerian artist. I think this is the first time I'm recommending a Nigerian artist. It's a really cool song. It does talk about some great sexual violence thing, but it's fun. And it's not every time you can make stuff like that fun to listen to. The name of the song is If You Ask Me by Omowumi. It is great. God, I so loved this song when I was younger. And I could sing every line. Yes, and that is the song for this week. Shout out to Omowumi. I don't know if she's still releasing music, but shout out to Omowumi. The song for this week is If You Ask Me by Omowumi. All right, so thank you very much for being here. My name is Abraham Sharon. This has been Hello World. It's me. And I hope we're fixing the world one podcast episode at a time.